Shiro really wanted to like Lance. He honestly did. The boy was charming and charismatic in a lot of ways. He was smart and witty at his best. However, it was when he was at his worst that Shiro just hated Lance. Ever since he'd been returned to Voltron, he found himself disliking the former Blue Paladin more and more. Maybe it was lack of respect Lance had for his leaders. Maybe it was the fact he had driven Keith away with his constant bullying of the boy. Shiro didn't like bullies, and Lance was the epitome of a bully. Lance wasn't kind or helpful, and he certainly had a worse temper than anything Shiro had ever seen before. But everyone else in the castle seemed to like Lance, so Shiro just didn't say anything. To be honest, he never saw the appeal to Lance. Lance was just annoying and brash and rude. He was constantly bullying Keith, and he was always making Allura uncomfortable. He was kind of unnerved when Allura started saying that Lance was actually a good person, because if anyone could understand his dislike for the boy, it was her. Couldn't she see that Lance was a pervert who liked bullying others and flaunting around his sexuality? He saw it a lot more now that he'd returned than before, mainly because now he was just paying attention. But it wasn't as though Lance was a bad person, he was just awful in his own right. At least he did the right thing and followed orders. If he wasn't going to be good for much, he should at least be a good soldier. Shiro really didn't mind Lance when Lance actually listened to him, but Lance didn't want to do that, because Lance hated the little guy and always wanted to be the star of everything. In reality, Lance shouldn't be the star of anything. He was loud and rude. Shiro still couldn't get over the fact that he pushed Keith into joining the Blade. Lance was constantly interrupting him too. Couldn't the others see that Lance was just stirring up trouble for everyone by constantly debating every point he said? Well, to be fair, Allura was bringing up the topic half the time, but Lance should support him, his leader. The others were so much more likable than Lance. They listened. They followed orders. They didn't interrupt. Until now. They all seemed to oppose his plan to put Lotor in charge, which Shiro simply didn't understand. Putting Lotor in charge would be a huge power move. They'd have someone controlling the Galra forces from their side. But no one else seemed to agree with him. What made it worse was Lance's constantly interrupting his and Allura's conversation about the matter. He could understand Allura's view, but Lance was clearly just trying to gain attention from everyone. And of course, like always, everyone played into his hands, acting like it was wrong that Shiro yelled at Lance when he was being downright rude to his leader. The boy was clearly the reason that everyone turned against him on this topic. Knowing how much of a bother Lance could be, Shiro wouldn't be surprised if he annoyed Pidge and Hunk into it. And Shiro was beyond mad that Lance thought he had any jurisdiction at all over the situation. He didn't, and Lance would never have any jurisdiction over the team. Ever. Not if Shiro could help it. Which led them to the position they're in now. After being vetoed from the plan, Shiro was going to do the right thing. He and Lotor had snuck out of the castle and onto the lion's hangar. Only one small obstacle. Lance was there having a late-night bonding session with Blue and Red. Shiro couldn't be sure what went over him, but Lance had already ruined everything enough for one day. He shouldn't be faulted for his actions of attacking Lance. He really shouldn't. He didn't even feel bad about it. Not when Lance smiled at them before noticing Shiro's glowing hand. Not when Lance's eyes shined in terror as Shiro slapped him. Not when Lance fell to the ground with a pretty sickening thud. Not when Shiro kicked him in the chest hard and swift. Not when Lance yelled out in pain. Not when Shiro kicked him hard against his face with a sickening crunch. And certainly not as they walked away with the boy still whimpering in pain. He shouldn't be faulted for his actions, or of having enough of Lance's bad attitude. Shiro wanted to like Lance. He really did. If only Lance wasn't so unlikable.